Hey, welcome to the 153rd episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patrons Adam Bricker and Andy Landon. I'm Oren Kaplan.
And I'm Matt Emma. Today we've got David Person from IFC on. This is part 2 of our development series where we talk to development executives about how you can sell your TV show to them. It's a ton of awesome insight in terms of what it takes to get a comedy on IFC, and also more realistically kind of just thinking about how a development person assesses and thinks about comedy in television.
And we also kind of dive into the bigger question of career paths. As a filmmaker, is it helpful to start on the network side of things? And because David is also a filmmaker and a development exec.
I think every development executive comes to a fork in the path and they kind of have to decide, am I going to be a creative or am I going to be a development executive? And then, perhaps later on down the line, the paths then dovetail again. So we talk a little bit about that and what makes a good development person in the first place. I can't wait to talk to David all about quirky comedy on TV. But before we do that,
yes.
Oren, it's been too long. What the heck have you been working on lately? Last episode, you were like, I've got so much good stuff to talk about.
I did my multi-day, my 4-day shoot. Did I already talk about this for the San Francisco and LA tourism board?
You set it up. I think that you were traveling with a pair of personalities that aren't especially well-versed in hosting necessarily. That's not their main vocation. And you're traveling all over. There's a ton of different company moves. You're in San Francisco. You're in Los Angeles. It sounds like a whirlwind of an adventure.
Yeah, we did 25 locations in 4 days. And we wrapped early almost every single day, which is the crazy part.
Well, you're just shooting natural light and you're kind of running and gunning. And
yeah,
it sounds to me like you were really fortunate in that your actors really synced in, that they really kind of figured it out relatively quickly.
The bummer of the show is that the 4th episode is so much better than the first episode because the chemistry just grows and grows. I mean, we are kind of editing it in order, chronological order to our actual trip. And by the end, they're just kind of bouncing off each other, dialogue wise and everything. In the beginning, it's a little more awkward. But
what did you do to help foster such chemistry? Is it all you or is it all them?
It's a combination for sure. The biggest problem was that the female talent, Tara, got into LA at midnight the night before we started shooting. So we literally didn't even have time to eat dinner together. The first time they met was on set. And so I guess the thing I did, which I think any decent director would do, is I researched our talent a lot. I watched all their videos on YouTube, looked through their Instagram, I read about them, looked at their Wikipedia, read commentary about them. And so I think when I can approach them not just as a director that says stand here and say this line, but as hey, I think this thing of that you do is really interesting. I saw you talk about it in this video. Maybe we can find a new angle on that. And I think that's helpful. And also, I mean, this is beyond obvious, but especially when it's not a hard scripted show, asking them what they think about, coming armed with ideas, but also being open to them saying oh, but I don't really do this, but I would do this, and just going along with it. So just being flexible. But really, it's kind of when you're working with child actors, a lot of times you have to cast really good adults to play off of them. And the adult act, when you have a scene with a father and a son or something, the person playing the father is really doing more directing of the child than you are, right?
Sure.
And so in this, because we had this comedian that's very comfortable being on camera and making jokes nonstop, and then this travel blogger that's more comfortable writing and photographing than being on camera, he was really the gateway into kind of loosening her up. And so
interesting. Yeah,
I don't know, but I started getting the cuts, and it's they want these episodes to be 2 to 3 minutes, and they should be 7 to 9 minutes. It's just
there's just so much stuff.
It's an order of magnitude off, really. We shot enough material to do a 22-minute travel episode, and they want it to be 2 minutes. And the problem is, you have to start cutting out the charm and the heart and the mumbles. Even on this podcast, remember, our very first few episodes, I would edit them and I would remove every single and every single pause and every single everything. And you were it just doesn't sound natural. Part of the charm of two people talking. Yeah. So anyway, we're working on the edits now. It's hard. They also have an insane turnaround, and I appreciate that they're involving me in the edits. But when you don't like music in an edit, it's so hard to give that note without saying okay, well, I'm going to go spend 2 hours finding music. But in the meantime, I'm doing treatments on 2 other things. I have this Disney job coming up. I'm pitching on couple other commercials. I just lost out on a commercial, not because I did a bad job, but because the client decided all of a sudden they don't want to do that commercial. So it's like all these things that are hard. Also, totally unrelated to work, but the way they set up like the classes at my daughter's school is they literally group kids by age. So my daughter is the oldest kid in her class. February 22nd is her birthday. Every single other birthday is within the next 4 weeks. So every weekend we have at least 2 birthday parties to go to, if not 3. And then it's really time consuming. So
there's only so much small talk that you can. I mean, I guess you can talk about your kids to,
I mean, I'm sure this tune is going to change in the future, but I freaking love these birthday parties. Well, so what have you been working on lately?
Kind of the same boat. I am pitching on a few things, lost out on a couple things, but the unique thing right now is that I shot a music video right before I went to Russia that's basically 100% green screen. And it's for a band called Potty Mouth. The video is coming out this week. It'll be out.
Wait, wasn't it due like 2 days ago?
No, it's due tomorrow.
Oh my goodness! The final?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! I mean, guys, this video has like 100 VFX shots.
It's exclusively VFX shots.
Yeah.
When I say it's 100% green screen, it is 100% green screen.
Except for the 10% that you shot in the science lab.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So it's been an interesting mental exercise for me because, Oren, you kind of helped me out with a couple shots, and we kind of used that as a template for me to go home and kind of like start working on the stuff myself. First of all, I had a real 1-2 punch of, really a 3-part punch of like having kind of an older laptop that has never given me any problems with any sort of footage ever before, but mostly is really like a coffee shop laptop. It's really there for like...
It's for writing
screenplays, exactly. Like if I can like get on the internet and write, it does 90% of what it's meant to do.
Or you can even edit videos.
Yeah, I can totally cut like 4K footage, no problem. We shot 6K.
Right.
And so it's pretty brutal. And then on top of that, there's a lot of Red Giant Magic Bullet universe sort of stuff, which are all
plugins that are already slow on HD, and when you're shooting 6K, it's like they're literally more than 10 times slower.
A little buggy. So like these exports are pretty gnarly.
Oh man.
But what's interesting about it, besides all of that stuff, I've managed to kind of kludge my way through it and like do a bad job of file organization and this and that and whatever. But that video is pretty fun. I'll show it to you after this. But it has made me realize when I wasn't kind of troubleshooting the myriad of technical issues, I had a really good time doing it. I like doing VFX every once in a while when it's in my skill set and like creative. And I realized I have been saying I'd like to do VFX. What I really like to do is animation with digital tools is what it boils down to. And so, all the shots that you touched are 300% more photoreal than anything that I
do have a tendency to go for that, which is not always good when you're trying to do something like graphic and poppy.
Well, it made me realize that about myself because like you were adding atmosphere and you were matching, the blacks were matching well and all this stuff. And not just that you had your eye was tuned to it in a way that I was not even thinking about trying to pay attention to, which I think is really fascinating and interesting. And the sooner that I decided to not try to replicate that, to not worry about that stuff, the more fun I had. And I realized that it was like I was laughing to myself at how stupid these shots were. And it's because they are way closer to Monty Python than true photorealism.
Right. And so it was like a Marvel movie.
Yeah, exactly. So it was an interesting thing to learn about myself. Unfortunately, one of the things I wanted to learn in doing this video was to think more critically about how to make photorealistic shots, basically, like how to be a better VFX director. And I realized that didn't happen at all.
Well, I find in general, like in post-production, the most enjoyable work is when the tools aren't slowing you down, when you get to be creative.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And so that's like in editing, I don't know if you remember back in the Final Cut Pro days, but like it used to be when you clicked like on your desktop to go to Finder or like find your different files, it would, and then go back into Final Cut and it would say like preparing video and it would take like 10 seconds or something. And I would go bonkers, like just waiting. Like I literally can't click away from this window without having to stop for 10 seconds, which is like eons in editing time. And so with VFX, like the more photoreal you're going, the more feathered edges and better keying and multiple layers and all this stuff, like the slower you're going. And so it really does zap a lot of the creativity out of it.
Yeah.
The other thing, this is super geeky, but in editing, you can shoot 6K, 8K, whatever, and then you edit with proxies, right? The lower res things. And then just when you're color correcting it, use the final high res stuff. So you can see everything playing back in normal speed. But in visual effects, you're always working with the highest resolution thing, especially when you're doing keys and things like that, because you want
the more data, the better.
Yeah. But it really, I don't know. I honestly, I'm working some VFX shots now in this movie, and they were originally going to be 2K, and now they've decided 4K, and I like want to kill myself. It's just everything takes so much longer. My computer's like crashing 5 times a day. I mean, you saw when we had that 6K footage in from on my pretty beefy iMac, it was like not moving.
Well,
yeah, try it on a laptop.
I probably had 40 crashes one day.
Yeah,
it was just like
it's depressing.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember saying like, "Oh boy." Thinking back romantically about render bars and like, oh man, it was so nice. Render times, that now when it's time to go make a snack, you can go pee and stuff like that. Multiple mornings I would wake up in the middle of the night, set another render, and then go back to sleep just to make sure that things didn't crash. Because basically every moment, when a shot takes 4 hours to output, you've got to be rendering nonstop.
Yep. Try doing 3D stuff. It's takes 10 times as long. I actually just found this tool. I bought it. It's called AE Suicide. It's not for assistant editors. It's for After Effects. Basically, if you're in the middle of working and you haven't saved for even 15 minutes or whenever the last autosave was, and you've done all this like rotoscoping or whatever, and then it just stops responding. You just get the spinning rainbow of death. If you run this app, it basically it like tells After Effects that something has gone wrong, which will make it, if you're lucky, save a backup copy and then it quit, like commit suicide. But at least it saves a copy. So AE Suicide is a pretty cool thing that I'm endorsing on the front end. Okay,
awesome.
We better get into this conversation. But before we do that, folks, did you know we have a Patreon page? Patreon.com/justshootitpod. It is a place where if you like the podcast, if every Thursday or Friday you open up your podcast app, Stitcher, Overcast, whatever, and you're like, hey,
Spotify,
ooh, there's a new Just Shoot It, I'll listen to that instead of a million other podcasts. If you're that type of listener and you really enjoy the show and you want to support the show and maybe help us put some live shows together, maybe make some swag.
We are very seriously talking about some merch for Patreon subscribers. Most specifically, we were flirting with the idea of a t-shirt, but I realized, what's the thing that all directors need?
Jobs.
Hats.
Oh.
Because you're out in the sun all the time.
What if we give people jobs? Like you give us like $2 a month and we'll give you a job.
Oh man, I'd love to.
Yeah, no, but hats. I just want it to be a cool hat because I pretty much wear the same hat all the time, and it's the one cool like trucker hat from this one company, and I've tried to get more from them and they won't give them to me. It just fits my head well. I have a very small head. I hate to admit
I didn't realize that true.
Yeah, my wife and I wear like the same hat size. Like relative to my body, it's kind of small.
That's really funny. Well, let us know if you would like a hat. That's a sort of freedom to kind of experiment with the show that you were providing with Patreon. Because now the money that normally is coming out of our pockets and going into Jay's, not all of that is out of our pockets anymore. So we have a little bit of room to get creative and figure out other unique, fun ways to help grow the show. So thanks, everyone. Patreon.com/justshootitpod. And without any further ado, let's talk to David Person from IFC. David Person, hello, sir.
Hello.
Welcome.
So, what do? Development?
Yeah. Currently, my day job is working for IFC TV in original programming, and we are a small team, which is great. Feels very family.
What's small? Like 5 people?
Like 4 people. Doing
4 people all in
original programming for IFC TV.
For current and
development. Yeah. It's a unique boutique type network, which is really great. We've been working together, some of us for over 4 years, so we have a backhand way of talking. We are only 4 people in original programming, so we do everything. It's development and current programming.
And how many shows do you have on air at any given time? Like the whole team?
Usually at a time, it's one show per quarter. So we program in a year 4 to 6 shows. So we are doing a very small, select, curated group of content.
And do all 4 of you work on every show, or each person has their own show?
Yeah, it's unique, especially since we recently experienced a restructure, and so our team has shifted and has been downsized. But we've always been just doing development and current programming all at one time. I think there was another era where development and current programming were separate, but luckily I have a great boss who comes from the producing side and writing side of the business, as do I. It can be a little bit challenging to hand off a project when you've been developing it and you brought it in, and
it's your baby.
It's your baby. You feel very much invested, just like the filmmakers or the storytellers. And to then hand it off to somebody else to run current programming, it's challenging. So we have a great leader who believes that we should be shepherding and also overseeing the shows once they get greenlit. So that's a really great thing about IFC, I would say, because we build these relationships with amazing people, and we want to maintain good relationships with our talent. So.
And just in case our listeners didn't listen to our last episode with Carrie, where we went through this, so current is shows that are on the air, reading the scripts, giving notes, making sure they're going well, kind of. Just
what is current versus development? It's kind of maybe easier if I explain development to current, because there is a flow, right? So it always starts with talent coming up with an idea, whether it's a kernel of an idea or a fully developed script, which is great. We then get in, and if we get the opportunity to buy a show because it feels right for the network and for our audience, then we get to develop it. And developing is, and again, for IFC specifically, or where I work, it's a little different than most places where we don't shoot pilots. So we need a proof of concept to sell to our bosses, who then have to sell up. And
wait, what's a proof of concept? Is it a video?
A proof of concept can be any type of executable way to show this is what the show is.
Could it be like a graphic novel?
I think in the publishing world that would be your proof of concept, and then your product.
Let me ask you actually about the proof of concept. Is that something that people are entering the conversation with, or is IFC financing a proof of concept kind of as almost like a baby pilot?
Proof of concept can be, I guess, before the pitching process, right? So you're, as a creator, you're developing some kind of way to show somebody that, hey, I want to see more, or I want to buy that. So sure. I mean, honestly, for us, the best way into, I think, a pitch as a proof of concept is a script. I mean, at the end of the day, so on the other side, from our standpoint, we actually are going to develop all the scripts for the first season. That's going to be our proof of concept to hopefully get a green light for production, or to actually bring a show from development and into the current programming stage, where it actually gets approval to be shot, and then you go shoot your show so it can be aired.
Can't believe you guys only do one a quarter. So is it like a real kind of tournament style? It's like Sundance.
I wish we were doing more. I think we all do.
So you have like a roster or like a list of shows that you are excited about, and you just kind of whittle them down and down and down until you get to one?
I think it depends every time we have to approach a show.
It's kind of a big picture question, right?
Yeah, it is a bigger picture question, because even going back to the proof of concept, for us to buy a show, we sometimes it's great if you've shot something. Honestly, it can help you. It could also hurt you. I've seen, proof of concepts that tonally or even aesthetically kind of throw us off in terms of, if that's the direction they want to go, we don't want to change their vision of it, but it might not be right for us.
Right.
Whereas if we can kind of get a little bit earlier in on the process, with that script, again, if we can get excited about a script and a story and the tone in that script, and we can kind of see it, on our air, then we can get behind that and help just guide it
Right.
so that we can actually get it on air.
Sure.
And then eventually that is going to be the writing process. So then it goes to your question, sometimes a show just develops in a different way that we were hoping otherwise, and usually, honestly, because we only program so many shows on our air, we have not many chances at bat, so to speak. So we can't throw a lot of spaghetti at the wall and see
Sure.
what sticks.
Right.
So we really go after shows that we really can get excited about and like actually envision seeing on air. And that, again, it's the script that at the end of the day, that's the executable document. And then that, form of proof of concept script is going to be what we use to go sell the show so we can actually make it.
Right.
So you are literally saying that the pilot script is the proof of concept.
Pilot script to get yourself
green
in the
light.
door and to pitch your show, that's your best proof of concept and a way for us to green light the show into the development process. Then from there, we would actually work together to write the rest of the series.
Right. So rather than traditionally, oftentimes people will come in, they'll pitch something, and then go into writing the pilot. So the proof of concept can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. You just mean having something you can read the pilot of is the execution of the idea. Rather, it's not like you're coming in with a sizzle and a this and that. You really just mean like have a fully formed idea and having that pilot script ready to go as a jumping off point makes it easier to buy the show in the first place.
Absolutely. I mean, our process is, we want to work smart. And we also don't want to waste anybody's time.
Right.
And we're, pretty busy. I mean, in the year, it's about 4 to 6 shows. And we also just did the Independent Spirit Awards. Actually, that's not including the Independent Spirit Awards.
And that comes out of your team too, original programming?
Yep.
But you don't do features, right? You're not buying
We don't.
movies
That's
at
the IFC
festivals.
Films people who are awesome.
Because that's a big... I feel like there was a time where like that was the biggest name you'd hear about acquiring things at festivals. Like every festival, it's like, oh, IFC. So that must be a bigger team than yours, IFC Films.
I don't think so.
Oh, really?
They may have 1 or 2 more people than us. I don't know, because I know their team also got shifted around, and so and they're based in New York.
Oh, okay.
I wish there was one person out here.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
They are probably going to need one eventually.
Well, when they hire
I know,
someone,
right?
Introduce me, David.
Absolutely.
Wait, so
You'll love them.
what I was going to ask is what percentage of shows that get into the development stage go to production?
That's a great question too. So unlike some places that buy a ton of shows and they may program more than us, but they're not going to pick up the same in terms of your odds are better, I think, at a place like IFC. We're also not going to go down the process very long if we don't think it has a chance.
Right.
So in fact, going back to Oren's point earlier, like where in the process of development do things kind of fall off the wagon, so to speak? I mean, it really is bespoke per project. Like it could be, again, like, script 2 and 3, we kind of get a bigger picture of the writing and if it's working as a show. And, sometimes we have to, part ways, or sometimes their show, I've even seen like be too big for us. You have, people have amazing ideas and it's really sad when we have to say, we just honestly in our wheelhouse of indie style television making, we are in a parameter that you really have to creatively play in that actually fits a budget. And so it's sad when we have to say goodbye to shows that, we talk to them and we're like, hey, we'd still like to do your show and we don't want to change your show. But, we may have to we may not be able to do it yet. But I've also seen things get really down the, actually like into,
close, yeah.
You definitely know people like you know people even from USC that we have put into development and we were so close to a green light.
Yeah.
But like, it's interesting now being on this side of the business. Like I've definitely seen, really smart executives and people who want to shepherd. And that's like how I see my role and our role. And it's interesting that the pitching process really starts obviously with the creator, but then we have to pick up the ball or the baton, so to speak, with this marathon.
Right.
So to, to belabor the metaphor, but like we're literally having to then be the cheerleader of the project to then sell to our bosses.
Right.
Who then have to sell to
their bosses.
Greenlight committee, who greenlights the shows across all the networks.
Yeah, because it's a huge decision. It's a huge commitment. So that's really great. I want to dig in a little bit more on that, right? So I think we all have a decent understanding of like, okay, somebody comes in, they pitch, they blow David away. David loves this idea, he loves this story.
How long is this at the average pitch to you?
How long is the what?
The average pitch.
How long do you block out on your calendar?
So I always block out an hour, and that includes like that's your time.
Talk.
That's your time.
Yeah,
like,
so there's a little bit of chit chat. Someone comes into the elevator. Oh, have you been?
Like you
check in with mutual friends.
Yeah, you should like we have a reception. They'll get you coffee. You should go to the bathroom.
Right.
You should gather.
Right.
Probably before that time.
Right. And you're kind of like skimming through the materials again real fast, or like trying to remember.
100%.
You're like, oh yeah. Well,
for sure. Because it's also
pull up their IMDb real fast, that sort of stuff.
All that jazz. And that's why like, you really want to work with a really good agent or manager or producer who's like actually sharing information with us in a smart way.
David, secret is you just look at their IMDb star meter. If it's under 10,000, they're good.
Yeah, there you go. And so then they sit down, they pitch for small talk for probably 10 minutes, right? And then they pitch for
there's no format to a pitch. Like the greatest thing is if you have a script, it can be way more of a conversation
Right,
about
you have
like,
something to talk
about. How do you envision the show?
Right.
You've like
It's
already
picture this.
If you get people in the room with your script, you have a far better chance of getting a green, like a development deal.
Yeah, you're interested
because you've already
pass.
proven that you can write and that your tone is at least somewhere close to the brand.
Yeah, if you didn't like the show, you just wouldn't take the meeting.
Now, having said that, people that we know very well, like I'm very happy hearing a pitch, even just with like a log line and a basic maybe here's what the show is. We take pitches like that too, but those are pitches that we know the people,
right?
And we want to say hello,
right. and so part of that though is that even so, say you take a meeting, you have a log line conversation, you spark to something, you still need to be empowered with a toolbox to take up to your box, to your boss, I mean, right? And that's
where the proof of concept
comes in. Proof of concept.
I mean, we will commission a script, absolutely, if it's not written, and we hear the pitch and we want to do the show. Like,
and then
that happens a lot too.
So you pay them WGA minimum or whatever. I mean, are you like like there? But
yes, that's correct.
So you said that you like ask them how they envision the show. I guess, is there a difference between like writers and directors, or like filmmakers or auteurs that are pitching to you? Like, is there ever like a writer that's pitching to you and they're not like, they don't know like what the show looks like specifically, but they, they're good with tone, but they're not.
I think like, aesthetic is very important to our network. Actually, we have to have some kind of idea what your visual voice is, so to speak.
Oh, interesting. Even if you're not interested in directing it, or do you only?
Usually there is one director, and usually there's one person who creates the show and writes most of the script. So our shows are very auteur-like.
Oh,
I think especially with the interest in like under-serviced voices kind of shows or stories about unseen heroes, and the indie kind of voice is IFC TV. Like, we are still torn from the cloth of IFC Films, which then did create IFC TV so that they can air their films, on TV. And a glossy show is just going to feel totally out of place on IFC.
Right.
And, even shows that are much more like IFC, but have their own distinct look, we know we can sense, if you're anybody watching TV, and there's so much to watch, but you can kind of get a vibe, right? And so we have to go by our vibe, and it's very specific, which kind of for me, I like a lot of different genres. So I wish we could break a little bit out of the box sometimes, but at the same time, it makes our job a lot easier in terms of curating. And it's kind of nice to work for a place that has such a distinct voice brand.
Right. Yeah.
So we're also looking for those types of people to make those shows.
Right.
And usually it's okay, what kind of characters do we get excited about? Who do we want to hang out with? Who are funny? Who are smart? Who are snarky? Who are, not saying the obvious, but something that we all kind of think about, and something universal. So that, not that it's a broad show, because we're not the broad type of show destination. It's more about what Portlandia did, I think, for the network was so important that even in terms of world, the world is super specific. So here you are in Portland. There's not many shows in Portland, so I think that added a lot of value.
I guess I was curious do you ever hear a pitch that's just an amazingly good pitch? It's not right for IFC, but it's perfect for AMC or something?
For me, I want to, yeah, of course.
And do you ever refer someone to someone else?
Absolutely. In fact, so I started at AMC at the company.
Oh, cool.
And I am friends with...
Wait, when you say at the company, does that mean AMC and IFC are owned by the same company?
Yes.
Viacom?
Great question. No.
Universal, Paramount?
What is that?
Disney?
Let's do a round of where...
What is the family called? It's AMC Networks, right?
It's AMC Networks.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. It used to be Rainbow Media, but it's known as AMC Networks. And it's AMC, IFC Films, WeTV, Sundance, BBC America, Shudder, Sundance Now.
Gotcha.
What's interesting is we're actually having more meetings together as networks, which is great. There's much more collaboration going on, but I'm already friends with everybody pretty much. And so there have been times where I'm like, oh, this show is so good, and I would love to explore it, and I would develop it. But usually the case is it's too dramatic for us, or not overtly comedic enough for IFC. We have to be comedic first, and then there's a whole conversation about the Kinsey scale of comedy versus drama, and everything in between is dramedy. And I think there's a lot of dramedy out there, which is great.
Wait, is this the same Kinsey that did all the sex stuff?
I'm inventing it myself.
He's just saying there's a spectrum.
If there's a spectrum,
comedy is fluid, Oren. It's 20.
Sorry, it was a joke. Sorry, I'm 0 on the Kinsey scale.
No. You are 0 in terms of
getting that joke.
So you're all over the place. I love it.
I guess why I think that's relevant is because I think anyone listening to this would be like, oh, they only pretty much greenlight one show a quarter. My show has to be the best show, and if I'm pitching an amazing show and then Alexander Payne comes in with a log line, then I lost the opportunity. But
not at all.
But knowing that you
that's
have...
so not the case, actually. I will interrupt you, because that is a fallacy.
So attachments don't matter?
No, they do, but it doesn't mean that Alexander Payne has to come in the room. I don't know if we could afford him.
Right.
Good point.
He did Hung, right? Was that a show?
Yeah, he did do Hung, but that's an HBO show.
Right.
So speaking of people who can afford him, basically.
But tonally, he's probably not that far off from
it's a little bit more.
IFC.
It's a little bit more dramedy, I think, than comedy. Yeah. Brockmire with Hank Azaria, that's a great show, especially to point to the fact that it's a narrative grounded story that does get dark and twisted, and we're not afraid to go there. But I think when you go to those spaces, it has to have some kind of buoy effect, and usually that's the comedic point of view of your character, that's driving the show, that has to be funny. And so Brockmire does a good job of having there's some plot, and we're seeing him struggle and have to pick himself up after falling from grace, but he always has something hilarious to say, or it's the point of view, or it is the circumstances.
Right.
And unfortunately, we have gotten scripts or pitches that they even say they'll pitch it as a soft comedy, or like it's more drama with some comedic moments, and that is great. And we don't want to change your show. Like, you should go make that show. But, with the people who are going to support you creatively, and we have to support, shows that are comedic. Right. They're overt comedies. So going back to the comedic Kinsey scale, like, we have to really be all the way over to the scale where comedy is.
Right.
And we can have dramatic moments that kind of tip it, but we can't be too plotty or dark all the time, or about
it just has to be a comedy. It's a pure comedy. Yeah. So talking about Brockmire, and I feel like Portlandia, there is like a little bit of a history of kind of talent-driven shows at IFC, right? When was, say, Hank Azaria? Did Hank Azaria come in with the pitch? Was that his show? There's kind of always like a superstar sort of leading the charge on those shows.
I think
that accurate?
It's like the chicken or the egg, what comes first kind of question, because I think the macro is there's just so much television out there that you have to do something to break out. And for a place that doesn't have a ton of money or opportunities to market a show, you have to do something to break out. So, look, we've supported people who are not so big, but their show was great. And frankly, we loved the show and we wanted it to succeed. Yeah. We wanted to be a part of it. So there's also that. In terms of Brockmire, I mean, Hank that was his character that he developed when he was young. And then he did that short with Funny or Die, which was hilarious.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
And there's a whole trajectory, but it ended up getting made into a TV show with us. But yes, he was definitely a part of the show. He was attached to it, but that was his IP.
And how common is that, though, would you say? Right, because like Portlandia, like Fred and Carrie were doing, like, I know them, Fred Armisen and Carrie Brownstein were doing Thunder Ant before that. And it came
with Broadway Video and Lorne Michaels behind it, right? And it's it's not little nobodies that are bringing the show. For
every one of those, how frequently do you see something where you're maybe attaching talent to it afterwards? You're like, oh, I love this script. Let's go find our own Hank Azaria.
It's maybe like a half and half cookie situation.
Maybe 40-60.
I don't know, dude. That's a hard question. Truth be told, like it like we have moments where we will hear the same exact idea 3 times in 1 week, and we're like, what is going on here?
Wait, what's the one this week?
You can't say
Is
that.
it about Uber drivers?
Yeah, you can't
exactly.
Funny.
Oh,
Ubers.
I mean, I think there was 1 week we heard a lot of gameplay, like
like video game stuff. You mean?
Yeah, like either the video game world or what is that? Like cosplay?
Oh,
stuff?
Sure. Yeah.
Cosplay.
Yeah. Or like LARPing, live action role playing,
which is I see why somebody would want to make a show out of it.
It's colorful and
very
fun,
very colorful. But it was interesting that we heard the same idea, like maybe 2 or 3 times. Yeah. But that's the thing about like any kind of odds with development. It's this. We're in the creative world. Like there's no way to predict something. That's why if we had a crystal ball, I think we'd all be on a movie set right now.
Well, I think also
you're on movie sets all the time as well as you. I wish I miss that. That's why I say that.
You get to go to your movie sets whenever.
That's true.
Yeah,
they're pretty fun.
Yeah,
we have amazing movie sets.
You get to show up late. You don't have to show up at 5 a.m.
Hey, but you know what? I was a first assistant director. Many projects, and I was the first and last person on every set for a long time.
This was before you worked development, not
I was a filmmaker for many years. I was a feature producer. I was a writer. I was an editor. I worked in animation. I worked in narrative features, documentaries. I produced live action.
Well, why'd you end up here?
Because I wanted to get back into networking with like people who are doing things through the system instead of me being so entrenched in the like indie world, which is a great space to be. But
It can
I
be
needed.
exhausting.
It's very exhausting.
The sustainability is exhausting, right?
It's so exhausting. Yeah. And I actually wanted to learn business affairs at a network in a studio, and I had worked for 7 years with an attorney, and I never thought I would ever be in a law office, let alone stay with someone whom I learned a lot from, and in the entertainment space. And so that actually brought me to AMC because I worked for the business affairs department at the time, and I was like, I wanted to look at it like a master's program in business, like studio, like deal making,
like the Stark program, right?
Yes. And so this was my master's program. And then that was a great experience. And then the opportunity to work creatively at IFC, which felt much more like my sensibility,
it's a match.
Came up, and
there you go.
That was it.
It's so funny. I feel like just recently, like we were talking with Jocelyn and Dawn, and I feel like there's a handful of people where it's nice to be reminded that having a diverse background, like doing different sort of work, not just being in the trenches all the time, is still super beneficial. Like it informs your work creatively. And so I think it's easy to be stuck in a day job and like not acknowledge how valuable that experience can be in ways that'll be surprising to you. You know what I mean?
100%.
So don't worry.
Dawn was telling us she used to work at a photo gallery, and now like all this, she like just fell in love with all these different photographers, their work, and it really inspired like the look of their feature, Greener Grass.
For sure.
And it's, she didn't choose to be like an assistant at a photo gallery.
Right. Yeah. She was just like, I hate this job. I'm like focusing on, UCB, and like I'm wasting all my time on doing this. I'm putting words in her mouth. But like, and as a person who felt that way about other jobs I've had, I think it's fascinating. Do you, in terms of your other coworkers or other development people that how frequently are they coming from an artistic background, or like where do you, because kind of all land there from different directions?
Yeah, everybody does come from totally different directions. There's people who come from, going to school as a business minded executive, or just going into business, and filmmakers who end up at the agencies so that they can get a job into the industry, so that they can maybe meet a writer or a client who's going to take them on as their assistant or showrunner. I did not take that route. I think there are other people, who got a job in the studio system or the production company system right away and rose up the ladder from being an assistant to a coordinator and up and up and up, and then maybe moved over to the network, or they started at the network. Like,
sure. Right.
There are people who did grow up at AMC or IFC. And that's the world they know. I will say, like, I think when we were in school, it was kind of, there was at least my impression, a view of executives as people who don't really get the creative process all the time.
Yeah, and that is interesting that's studio notes keep ruining my show.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And because they are thinking of selling tickets, right? And selling marketing and getting people to watch a show in the same way that like, everyone can complain that CNN gives Trump so much coverage, but the fact of the matter is that's why people are watching CNN.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that they leave out, stepping away from the CNN metaphor, you're leaving out the fact that like development is such a hard job that you have to love the art in order to do it in the first place. And also like they're coming from a sense of experience of like helping to tailor your show or your movie, not just to sell tickets, but to tighten and to appeal to an audience. And like most of the time that's what you want, so I think sometimes people are like, oh, they're dumbing it down or they're underestimating an audience. I think that maybe used to be true, but now there's so much TV out there that I think most development executives we know are really working towards sharpening a voice, making it special, making it unique, making it noisy in a way that maybe has shifted in the last couple decades, but certainly most development people we know now are advocates,
Right. Going back to the fact that, so you're a filmmaker, you're a producer, you went to film school, and you are now working in development. like, is there ever a situation where someone with a job like yours pitches a show to yourself, like to IFC? Like, is that not part of like the dream? Like you made it to the inside.
You have to quit first. You quit, start a shingle, and then pitch to yourself.
Correct.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
In that instance, yes. I mean, I am still writing, and I still want to pursue my own stuff.
Yeah, you're filling the shoebox up.
Yeah.
And then you can quit and then sell a show to IFC.
Exactly.
But you also have all the answers as to what you
one
would
of the
buy.
other million other
Sure.
platforms out there.
At least at IFC, you know exactly what buttons to push to sell a show.
That's true. I don't know if I'm that like super hard comedy writer type person though. I'm definitely more of a dark comedy, in which I think there's a possibility like for a dark comedy that I would write, you know, find its way on IFC, but I don't know. I don't know about that. I feel like I'm definitely a good like thermometer for IFC. My sensibility, like as an audience member, is right on brand, but in terms of writing, I don't know.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing to know about yourself. I think that's why there's a certain shelf life to development people. I think you either end up a lifer, where it's your passion and you just do it forever and you end up running the company, or you tap out at a certain point because all of a sudden you realize your network of talent and development side and knowing the inside of the company, you wait for the timing to be right, and then you sell. I
mean, that's what you did, right? I mean, essentially.
Yeah,
in a way.
I landed more in your court in that, like, my sensibilities are similar to what Comedy Central was doing, but I wasn't doing exactly, and my reel was not perfect for Comedy Central. But certainly I had many peers who literally would quit and then sell a show. Like, they were developing that stuff kind of on the side.
I guess some of the College Humor guys, too, did that, right?
Yeah. Or, I mean, they're, I think, more in-house even. Like, I don't think they had to leave. Like,
right.
they just get to develop the show there.
It's funny because so the way we do this show is we interview our guest, and then you're going to go home, and then Matt and I will do an intro, and sometimes we chat about like what we liked about this conversation. And one of the things I was going to talk to Matt about, which I'm just going to bring up right now, is like you look back at the people, you know, that we went to college with, the people that have been in the film industry the same number of years as us. And you look at like Carrie and you look at David and you're like, these people are working on like amazing, like top level television. You know, you're working on Portlandia, you're working on whatever secret project Carrie didn't tell us he's working on, right? But like big shows, you know, because you took this path that kind of led you to the other side of the network, right? You're listening to pitches instead of giving pitches. And like, do you ever think, Matt, like we are coming from the production side of things pretty much, right? We're trying to make things, show people our work, get better gigs, like freelance our way up while we're pitching at the same time. Like, I guess just path-wise, if you look at the IMDb page of you versus me, you know, maybe I have a lot more directing credits, but people have heard of the stuff that your credits are on, you know? And so like, what's the balance? And I guess it's interesting to hear about this idea that like a lot of development people are working on these big shows and then leaving the network and re-pitching things to the show. So then you have these big credits, but you also get to do both things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a special person who both flourishes as a development executive and then also flourishes as a writer, director, producer, and they're really always producing. That's the thing, is that being a development person, an exec, means you're a producer, and having your own shingle means you're a producer. And sometimes people can do all of those things and also have the good fortune of being at the exact company that matches their sensibilities. And that is special, for sure. That's like you know, you're kind of winning the lottery. I know, having gone down that road a little bit, I knew that I didn't have the ability to flourish as a development person. That I was too controlling, maybe is the real word. That I had to like roll up my sleeves and like be the guy whose fingers are on the keyboard, like on set every day, calling the shots in a literal sense. And that like it would kill me to stand behind a monitor and not get in there.
I mean, and it might not even be a control thing as much as like what you have more fun doing day to day, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I like figuring out how we're going to rig the light to this, you know, beam or whatever, or how we're going to pull off this shot more than I like reading 20 scripts.
Yeah.
You know?
I would look at those directors and just be insanely jealous.
But there's a big trade-off, you know, that you're not working on
Sure.
the biggest shows.
I haven't been to a dentist in a while.
And you're not getting health insurance. You know, all these things that David probably has. David probably takes for granted, like many other persons.
David doesn't take it for granted, but he does enjoy a corporate card every once in a while.
David, I forget you're on the show.
And I think you
wanna
do
say
too.
something?
I do.
Yes.
In fact, we need to make that happen like at some point.
David,
Between the three of us.
David is, I think, one of our first guests. This is episode 153. You might be the first guest to bring us snacks.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for
One
doing
must
that.
always arrive with something. I totally agree. Like, I mean, I know, you know, like where my job is really great and I am a part of some amazing projects and I don't take that for granted.
And your job is time consuming too, right? It's not like
For
you can
sure.
just like go
Oh, for
home
sure.
and you have no worries.
Oh, for sure. Well, up until this year, I was concurrently working on network shows and crib shows. So all the digital short form shows I was also working on. So in addition to being in meetings for the network and helping oversee those shows, I was also mining talent, bringing them in, hearing pitches, and then also overseeing production on crib shows. So that was even more.
What are crypts?
The comedy crib is on ifc.com, and we got to produce some of the content on there for a few years, which was
It was
great.
like an incubator, basically. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, can you tell us that?
And
Is that
so,
still
well,
in
because,
existence?
and to go back to the proof of concept conversation, we're going to bring it full circle. Since we don't shoot pilots, this was an opportunity for us to shoot pilots.
Mm-hmm.
Because-
kind of backdoor pilots, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're, you know, yeah, the format would be something like 3 to 5 minutes, 6 episodes, a series. And then if you string that together, that's about a half-hour show. So you can get an idea of what they envision for a show if it works well. If we get enough buzz, then we would, you know, want to hear the pitch. And we did get 2 of those shows greenlit into, well, I should say, put into development. I keep using this word greenlit into development. It's really just put into development,
Right,
I should
right.
say.
But the budgets on the digital shows are much smaller than what you would have for a TV show.
Yes.
So
And
the
that was,
concept had
and it
to-
was significant, which was great that a lot of people still wanted to make these shows. But, you know, it was really a window into a larger show, and people knew that. But man, we made a great show with Janet Varney that she just killed it. Like with even in our budget constraints, like, you know, she called on a lot of favors and they made it look amazing. And we had a great director and writing team and producing team. And they knocked it out of the park.
And so are you still doing the digital shows?
At the moment, not really, because again, with the restructuring now, it's that digital sector has kind of gone somewhere else, and you know, we are tasked with staying on the network shows because we are now like a very tiny team.
Yeah. You've got enough on your plate already.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
'Cause
at the
think-
beginning of the year, you know, we're open all year round for development. So we don't have like a development cycle. It's kind
Right,
of
like
like
no pilot
when we
season.
can get a green light, then we're like, okay, we're going to go make the show. And you're going to go make it all at once, like you're making a movie.
Right. Cool.
So you know, and that's why the development process is we write everything, at least every script up front, if not all.
And then just kind of watch it.
And then once, if it gets the green light, then you go into heavy prep and then you shoot it all at once within a month. And it's like, yeah, you're cross-boarding it and you're just banging it out and you're not going to do pickups. You got to get everything in. And,
Just nail it.
and that's another part of the, you know, the writing process and kind of like wrapping your brain around, like, is this producible? Like, are we going to kill ourselves
Right.
if you can't get, you know, your episode in 3 days?
Right. 3 days.
So
Yeah.
it's
For 22 minutes or half hour?
22 minutes. It's a half-hour show with commercials.
And do you hire one director for each series, basically?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because otherwise cross-boarding, it's too hard. Yeah.
Yeah, like Matt Piedmont just directed Spoils of Babylon for us. Which
Oh,
is
cool.
Such a funny show.
Yeah, yeah.
So good and so stylized. He just directed a show that we just that's in post right now called Sherman Showcase. It's so good. It's very exciting because I think it's going to take like IFC in a new direction in terms of like the fact that we get to play with music and dancing and breaking the form and but it's Matt directed that entire series.
Cool.
Mo Marable's been doing Brockmire for the last 2, and Tim Kirkby did the first season.
And you guys did documentary now too, right?
We did.
And you did Spoils of Babylon. So you pretty much, even though I mentioned this Alexander
documentary
Payne
now is
thing,
screening now or airing now.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I mean, it still helps if you're Lorne Michaels when you come bring a show to IFC.
Yeah, of course. And it depends on really the idea. And if you don't have people attached to it, we will help you attach people to it. We bought a show that was just great, and we had to still cast it, and we did, and it still got to see the air, so to speak. It still got to be on network, and it did really well.
Cool.
So I think it's again like it always starts with character and the world and what's your show.
So speaking of just like how you define a show, since we have to kind of wrap this up, I love like quick tips. Do you have any? Can you give us 3 things you should not do in a pitch?
Anything that alludes to anything that fits your network, because we've got a lot of other networks we're pitching, so we're just kind of being agnostic to this specific question you're asking, because we're keeping the door open for, I think IFC is such a specific kind of destination.
Right.
Tailor make your pitches for the audience that is
it can kind of only be an IFC show, basically. Yeah.
We're really the advocates for the people who then, see a show on our air. So, we're just as big of fans usually as anybody in the room. Like you're in the room because we want to definitely meet you and hear your ideas. So we're just as excited. So I know people get nervous in pitches. I certainly would too. And I hope that our energy in the room calms people down so that they can just have a conversation.
Right.
So I would encourage people more than just to look out for just be yourself. And because this is a way for us to get an idea of how are we going to work together? Right. Because at the end of the day, we've all made stuff. You want to be in business with people you trust and that are going to execute their work at the highest level possible, but you also want to get along with that person. So
what about visuals? Would you discourage
no, I like visuals a lot, actually. I think visuals can either help people like me who have a hard time sometimes I have a short attention span, so sometimes I'm trying to pay attention when you have to understand we're people, so we're coming from going 100 miles an hour usually, and then we stop and then we hear a pitch. So it's good when you're introducing characters sometimes to have visuals, so we can because I'm a visual person too, and we are a visual medium, and we're specific to our aesthetic, so I think it is helpful. I don't think you necessarily again have to shoot your sizzle a sizzle or a trailer or anything like that, but definitely give us some kind of aesthetic reference. Yeah, that helps.
Yeah. And does it bother you if it feels like the pitch is rehearsed?
No, because if I think some people are even very nervous to the point to where they're shaking with a piece of paper in their hand and they're not performing. That does not matter either. If your pitch is clear and we get the idea and it works for IFC and we get excited about it, we're going to take the pitch from a guy or a girl or a female writer who's shaking with his or her paper over the person who's overly performing and trying to get our attention, and they're just not right for us. The performance may be amazing. By the way, we have had some amazing performances in a pitch, full on singing,
music
3 people hired or brought in to pitch a musical comedy where like we hear the music and it's amazing.
Did you buy that pitch?
We didn't buy that one in particular that I'm thinking of, but
so there's a band in the room, you're blown away and you're like, pass.
Well, it's
for real though.
Oh, it's so painful sometimes.
And you loved it, right?
Yes. I mean, there's so many times where like I will be so excited about something and it's just not going to work. Like,
yeah, sure.
Again, it kind of goes back to like that, though, we have our sandbox to play in, and, it may be a certain size or, with certain tools, but you got to, you can build a lot of cool sandcastles with the sand that's in that box. That was way too poetic.
I love it. Well, David, this was perfect. I think we go out on the sandcastle analogy.
Yeah.
That was a great joke.
Let's move into unpaid endorsements.
Unpaid endorsements.
So we've talked about this show before. We've even had one of the producers on. But have you guys seen the third season of Crashing?
Not the third season. No. Is it good?
I'm like really liking it. I'm only 3 episodes in, and the third episode was directed by Oren Brimmer, whose claim to fame is having my same first name.
Different Oren.
But yeah, it's like in the very first episode, he like meets this young up and coming comedian that's like never really performed anywhere. And he offers to bring him to New York to, just watch how he does his thing. It's Pete Holmes as a comedian, and he goes and basically this young comedian like outperforms him everywhere. Like he goes to this place where he's auditioning for a weekly spot at this comedy club, and then this younger guy that he just happened to have with him like also gets an opportunity to audition, and of course he lands it and Pete doesn't. And this kid is, he's gay and he's like ethnic and he's got all these things and he's interesting and he's young, and like Pete Holmes is just this like real dopey like kind of average white guy, and the season is a little bit about him trying to find like what's special about him. Because like the feedback he gets is like, I've seen like a billion guys like you. There's nothing interesting about you, and I don't know. It's something, that's like obviously in the zeitgeist and we talk about it a lot, but I thought it was like an interesting take on it. And it's just kind of done really sincere. Like he's not mad or anything about it. He's just like really trying to figure out who he is, in this season. And like a lot of it is about the evolution of comedy. There's this one guy in the third episode that's like kind of showing everyone the ropes and showing them how to do comedy, and he's doing like a big set at this little town, and everyone is like offended by his comedy, his sex jokes all of a sudden, and he's like, this set used to kill, and it's just kind of like about the evolution of like what we find acceptable in comedy and what we're interested in. I don't know. I'm just like really digging it.
Great. David, you got anything?
I'm going to go see a really funny show. Have you ever heard of Fairy Tale Theater?
No.
By Michael Feldman. It's here in LA and it's playing now. And a very, very funny and smart writer, actor, Michael Feldman created the show. And it's like one of those things to where I heard about it and it didn't sound exactly right for us. Mostly because we do very grounded stuff and this is kind of heightened, and it's really about fairy tales, but it's told from an adult perspective. And they shot a pilot. So this was a for instance, where they did shoot a pilot or a presentation, and it was so good. It was so good. It was so impressive, and it was exciting, and our entire team like loved it. And it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to get your entire team to really like something, especially that's so out of the box for us. And so it was great to see something that could have broken our rules, just for the sake that it's good. It's really a great show. And so that's kind of a cool thing too. Like to think again, it's like, it's always about like the quality of the storytelling, if it's funny and if it's just great, like if it should be seen, and this show needs to be seen by many people, and so you all should go see this show. But
So
it's
it's a live
really
show?
so. This is a live show that he's still putting up, and it goes through. It's like vignettes, and they're different stories, different tales, and some of them are very out there. Well,
But kind of still with a fairy tale sort of vibe to them.
yes,
Cool.
yeah. So I know on
it
a
in
surface
LA?
level.
Or-
Yep, it's on Pico. I don't remember the theater's name. It's pretty close to Fox Studios, just west of there. Anyways,
So if you go to the show,
if you
look for David Person, pitch him your show.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, fairy tale theater sounds great. Mine is an article called How to Not Feel Like a Failure in the Film Industry. A previous guest, Dean Peterson, shared it, and I thought it was really great. And it's by a filmmaker named Chris Osborne. He wrote and shot a short called True Blue, and it's about him having a frank career self-assessment and envisioning a system that is independent and not indie. And so basically it's kind of just a think piece about the nature of how you perceive yourself as an independent filmmaker. And also the thing that's more interesting to me, frankly, is the archetype and the model that we think of as independent film. And he talks about how this idea of a filmmaker, a renegade filmmaker making a movie for no money, and how it's on the backs of broke college students, and like they're an auteur, is an idea that came out of Sundance a long time ago, and we still kind of adhere to, and how there's a different model out there where the people that make your film with you are responsible for a ton of micro decisions that are that really affect the way your film is, and that it's a communal experience. And so you should think of it that way and not build up your own career just for yourself, but that the community that you're making a film with is a true community. You should think of it that way, and we should really kind of break down the ideas of auteurism, basically. And I thought it was really poignant, really interesting, and frankly, I've been thinking a lot about a lot of the points that it makes about how you can really make a film with people and not just kind of exploiting them, basically. So it's called How to Not Feel Like a Failure in the Film Industry, by Chris Osborne. We'll have links in the show notes. It's great.
Cool. I will definitely read that.
It's really great.
One of your first endorsements in a while that I'm going to
You should listen to all of them, Oren. They're all pretty good.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, David, for coming on the show. Do you tweet
This was
or
fun.
Instagram or anything?
Yeah,
I Instagram.
Instagram. What's your Instagram handle?
USCINEMAN. Oh my
That's
god.
US Cineman.
Yeah, all put together.
Wow.
Guess what? I created that.
Oh man! Also, it's so funny because when we were in school, USC was really hot on the SC combination. So like, our campus guide was called a Scampus, and I feel like there were a lot of things where they would just add an S in front of any word that started with a C. So US Cineman.
US Cineman.
US.
It's like USC Cinema Man put together.
That's pretty great. Well, thanks so much, David. You can follow the show on all social media at justshootitpod. That's also the name of our website. You can follow me at Mr. Matt and Low on all social media.
And I'm at Smitey Pyleg on Twitter, but more importantly, I'm Oren Kaplan.
O Kaplan.
I'm O Kaplan on Instagram. I don't even know my own name. This episode was edited by Jay McCullough. It was produced by Madeline Rosewatt. Our webmaster is Ewan Williams, and the music you're listening to right now is from the Free Music Archive and the artist Jahzzar.
Thanks, everyone.
Leave us an iTunes review if you get a chance. We would appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.